Hello, princesses, and welcome back to Not Fit for Print Beauty with me, Rebecca. You know, I like December because we get to do a lot of reminiscing, makeup reminiscing, the best kind. And we get to go through the year and look at what we've purchased and how we've liked it. And I've done a few recap videos already, but today's I'm really looking forward to. Today I'm calling the 2022 Green Team. These are my top 10 favorite green eyeshadow palettes that were released in 2022. We all love to go, wow, this is the year of the foundation, the year of the blush, the year of the highlighter. The year of the foundation it very well might have been, but I'll tell you, in eyeshadow there was a heck of a lot of green released. And I'll tell you the parameters that I had in order to make my top 10 list, okay? But let me just say, green is a good color that's almost no color. Green really strikes a nice balance between those of us who love neutral palettes and those who love the really colorful ones. Green kind of works in between. Green can be khaki or olive. It could be lime or almost neon. Green goes kind of everywhere, and it really is flattering to so many, pretty much all eye shades. Whether you have green eyes like me, brown, it's beautiful with blue. It really does complement so many skin tones and so many eye shades. And hair shades too. So we did see a lot of those released, I think more than other years. So what was the criteria for making my top 10? Well, first of all, it had to be released in 2022. And second of all, it had to either have 2 or more green shades or green leaning shades or be considered a green palette, and I'll explain that as we go along. But I want you to stop for a moment first, if you don't mind. Pause this video or take a moment right now and write down what you think my number one choice is for the green palette released in 2022. Take a moment, you can cheat and see what other people have put, and then you can see if you are right at the end. But do take a moment if you can and go down and tell me what you think my number one is. It may surprise you, but I bet most of you it actually won't surprise. I think it's pretty much the greenest palette released this year. All right, let's talk about it. Starting with number 10. This is the lowest on my list, but still a wonderful little palette. And this is the one Winter Beach palette. This is a Lawless Beauty. And this is kind of a surprisingly blue-green palette. Definitely has a few green and kind of blue leaning oceany shades. This is an affordable little palette. It's only $27 for these days. That is affordable, and the shades perform really nicely. It's a really fun kind of green blue oceany palette that's very pretty, and the shades get the job done. I'm not saying they're the most perfect ones on the market, but they are really easy to use and nice. Let's go to what I did was I swatched the entire palette. We're going to look at all of the shades in just green, all of the green shades together outside in the warm California sunshine. But right now we're just starting with some studio shots of the entire palette first. Here it is as it's laid out in the pan on my arm in studio lighting. That is the Lawless Beauty, the Winter Beach, the one Winter Beach eyeshadow palette, a very kind of blue-green leaning oceany palette that celebrates the California beaches in the winter, which are a great love of mine as well. All right, number 9 was a tough choice. It almost didn't make it. Number 9 is from Melt. It is the Bad Side Zodiac. They made a few of these palettes, mini palettes, and this is the Earth one. This is a $38 palette. It's got a, Melt can be hit and miss with their eyeshadow formulas and palettes, we all know, but this is a very nice one. And of all the Earth signs that they made, in 2022, this was the one that everybody liked the most. This was Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Those are the Earth signs, and I am a Capricorn, so maybe that's why I chose it. I'll tell you why it almost didn't make the list. For an Earth palette, it doesn't have a lot of green. This palette feels more green than it actually is. There's really like one green shade. So I thought, oh dear, I misremembered this as having more green than it actually does. But the case is green. It's called Earth, and the Earth, of course, has so much grass and green blue seas. So it feels more green than it is, but I had to keep it. I would have put it higher, but I had to keep it at number 9 because it's a green feeling palette, but not necessarily a green looking palette, if that makes any sense. So here that is first on my arm in studio lighting. It's very pretty. They perform really well too. And, you know, I'm not saying that $38 is cheap, because my goodness, it is not. But they do perform very well. It's a pretty one. It was, I think, the best selling of those astrological sign palettes that Melt did. Number 8, this was a tough one. I have a lot to say about this, and I've actually been waiting for a video that would provide me the opportunity to say it. This is the Rose Ink eyeshadow duos. Okay, so these are $30 and they come in a range of colors. This one is the green leaning one. It has a green and kind of a golden green shade. I really liked these little palettes, these little duos, but here's my issue. Here's my issue. Fellow creators, 2 especially, Makeup Craze and Cruelty Free Beauty, 2 of my industry friends, had trouble with these drying out. Makeup Craze said that she saw them in store and couldn't swatch them because they dried out. And Cruelty Free Makeup told me that hers came dried out. I thought maybe if they were accidentally left open. I don't know what the deal is. But because of that, I put it low on the list, even though I think the green is beautiful. I cannot wholeheartedly recommend it because 2 people I respect have had issues with theirs. And I've been looking for a time to say this. I've been enjoying mine. But please do take their opinions in consideration as well. It's true. And write down below in the comments if you had issues with yours drying out. Let's kind of discuss it, please. Here it is, however, swatched on my arm. It's just 2 shades, but it still counts as a palette in studio lighting. It's awfully pretty. But like I said, I cannot wholeheartedly endorse something that I know could dry out, even though it hasn't on me. They were not lying to me. Number 7 and 6 are actually 2 places taken up by Urban Decay, of all. First of all, we have the Urban Decay Naked Mini Foxy palette. This is a $29 palette. As I said, the Rose Ink is $30, which seems a bit much if it's going to dry out. But here is the Urban Decay Naked Mini Foxy palette for $29. Definitely is more green than you think, not just in the cover. They have really cool little covers. These were fun little palettes, you guys. I don't know. Comment below if you picked any of these up. They were fun little palettes. $29. You would think it's not so green, but it's very green leaning. Even the browns are very olive. It performs well. I like it. For $29, it travels well. It's fun. I think they apply really in a really striking manner and blend out nicely. It's a sweet little palette. I don't really have any complaints. It's still in my bottom 5. We're getting to the top 5 soon. But Urban Decay. Let's take a look at that in its entirety, the way it's laid out in the pan on my arm in studio lighting. That is the Urban Decay Naked Mini Foxy for $29. And as I told you, number 6 was the Urban Decay Wild Greens palette. I had to look up to make sure this little guy was released in 2022. I started thinking maybe it was 2021. But it is 2022. It is. I think it was like spring of 2022, actually. Time flies. This is a $44 palette, and this palette is very green. At the time, I thought, well, it could have had more greens for it being called Wild Greens, but pretty much the entire bottom row is olives and khakis and just bright greens. And it's really pretty. This little guy, let's see, this was $44, and it got a lot of flack at the time for the packaging. People did not like the cardboard packaging. I didn't mind it because I think it takes up less space. This is really nice and compact. I mean, it's so thin. And I think it's actually kind of pretty. It didn't get a lot of praise at the time, but now when I hear people refer to it, you know, when I do swatch comparisons online, a lot of people are telling me they like this one and they enjoy it and they want things compared to it. So I think it did better than its initial response would have led us to believe. That is, again, $44. All right, let's get into the top 5. The top 5, depending on my mood, I was changing them around. I was changing 4 to 3, 1 to 2. These are kind of interchangeable. The top 5 green palettes released in 2022. I might move these around tomorrow. So get me while my answers are still the same. Number 5 I gave to the Tom Ford Cream Khaki palette. It is an expensive little guy at $90. There's 2 reasons I put this lower in my top 5. It is the top 5 because I love the Tom Ford Cream Quads. I put the khaki, this is spelled K-A-K-I. In fifth place, so the bottom of the top 5 for a number of reasons. Number 1, $90. Really, Tom? Seriously? And number 2, these are such dark, deep shades. You do have to work with them a bit. The Tom Ford, the Violet Satin palette is so easy to work with, you barely need a mirror. This one, you gotta look at what you're doing, and I've heard a lot of people say that they actually use another palette combined with it. You have to make sure you put the shades on in the right order. It can make a muddy mess if it's not done right, and I don't feel that way about his other cream palettes, so it actually is, though I love his cream palettes, it's actually my least favorite of his cream, so I put it at number 5. Here it is on my arm in studio lighting. Take a look at it. It just can get a bit dark. If you don't watch out, it just can get a bit dark. Number 4, we have a Viseart Petit 4 in the 4th place. I just realized that. Petit 4, number 4. Here is the Pistachio palette, and this is very green leaning. So we have 2 kind of more neutral shades up top, and then we have 2 green, well, very green and green leaning on the bottom. Now you might be thinking, oh, Rebecca, I thought of one you forgot, Peridot. Viseart Peridot. Actually, Peridot, which I brought out for fun, is a November 2021 release. Peridot was Viseart Holiday, so a year ago. So November 2021, but I brought it out for fun. The official number 4 is the Pistache, and I brought out Peridot, this one right here, just because it was towards the tail end of 2021. So I gave it a little honorary mention. Let's look at both on my arm in studio lighting. The Pistache being on the left and the Peridot on the right. They're really pretty palettes, both green leaning. But remember, Peridot doesn't really count as a 2022 palette. All right, number 3, 2, and 1. Woo, these are interchangeable. I bet you kind of know what's coming, right? All right, number 3 I gave to the Dior Khaki palette. This one is spelled Khaki. This is a $49 palette. By the way, both Visearts are $25. This Dior palette is a $49 palette. It is a traditional Dior Backstage palette, which means that it has the little eye primer here and lots of green leaning browns and green leaning olives. It's a super pretty palette. I really like Dior Backstage. They're just really fun to me. I don't often use the eye primer, but when I do, I'm thrilled with it. I think there's a lot to work with here. I like the juxtaposition of this kind of chalky's a bad word for it, but really pretty opaque kind of white shade. Let me show it to you on my arm, first in studio lighting. This is the Dior Khaki for $49. It makes my list number 3 of the best green palettes of 2022. And I just think it's beautiful. I mean, you know, if you're in the top 3, you might as well be number 1, right? All right, number 2 and then number 1. If you haven't yet, please write down below what you think, if you want to play along, what you think my number 1 will be. Might be the same as your number 1. Number 2, I have actually given over to the Anastasia Beverly Hills Nouveau palette, $55. This one has green packaging and lots of green leaning shades. You're going to look at first and go, what? There's a lot of green in there, guys. Look at that. We got brown greens and olivey greens, lots of greens in here. The shadows perform beautifully. This is ABH returning back to its esteemed roots, away from those kind of crazy, no offense, bright Norvina palettes, which I don't think do that well for them. You know, festival palettes and whatnot. Maybe they do, but you know, for my subscribers and viewers, you can tell me if you disagree. I think people are getting sick of the Norvina bright things, but this is really Anastasia Beverly Hills back to its glory. Let's look at it here on my arm in studio lighting, and you'll see it has a lot of kind of green leaning elements to it, and it is super duper pretty. Before we look at all of the green shades from here in outside in the warm California sunshine, we are going to in a moment, I do want to reveal my number 1 palette. This palette had the most greens, and there was a brown in here that is more green leaning than I realized, and I don't even know if I swatched it in the outdoor swatch. This one is pretty much all green. This is a green palette, and I think she does green really well. Did you guess? It is the Natasha Denona Retro Glam palette. $69 and a whole lot of green. Good, well-performing green shades too. Mint greens, brown greens, khaki greens. You want a green? You got your green in here, mixed in with these kind of beautiful green leaning browns, but also some peachy shades. I think it's super, super pretty. You know, we could have looked at other palettes. There's a lot, you know, Maneater had some greens and Huda had some greens. I don't really think of them as green leaning, so to speak. They do have, a lot of them do have greens in them. The Pat McGrath, larger Mega. They do have greens, I believe. I got to check the Mega for this year. But you know what I'm saying. I just went with the top 10 that I feel give a green vibe to them. Let's look at the entire Natasha Denona Retro Glam palette on my arm. First, in studio lighting, take a look and see it here. There's a lot of green in there. To me, that is the greenest palette of the year. Now, you know, down below, what makes this community is that you guys can weigh in on what you think. But first, before we even talk about that, I wanted to do something fun. We didn't get to go outside into the warm California sunshine in this video. So what I've done is taken the green shades from every one of these 10 palettes and made a whole green smorgasbord on my arm. Let's go outside into the warm California sunshine and take a look at all of the greens. The top row has Lawless, Melt, Rose Ink, Urban Decay Naked Mini, and Urban Decay Wild Greens. And the bottom from left to right is the green shades from Tom Ford's Khaki, Viseart Pistache, Dior Khaki, and of course the green shades from the ABH Nouveau. And all along that bottom third row is all of the greens, maybe minus one, I think actually, from the Natasha Denona Retro Glam. There's another, I think, green leaning brown that I might have accidentally left out, because in the pan it doesn't look as green, so it might have fooled me. I don't know. Now, this is where you guys weigh in. Do you think of some other palettes as green when you think green palettes? Because, you know, there's more than just these 10. I picked my top 10. What are yours? Or what do you think was a glaring omission? I love the dialogue, and I don't mind it. I don't feel that you're taking me on. We're having a conversation. So if you're like, oh my gosh, Rebecca, how could you not put that down below? Take one of these out if you think they didn't work. Tell me what you think. I like the dialogue. So let me know what you would have put in here. Remember, stipulations, it has to be green feeling overall. And maybe that's my opinion. Maybe you have a different one. And it has to have been released in 2022. Okay, so definitely weigh in below. That's what makes us a community. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I sure hope that you did. If you haven't already done so, definitely subscribe. We are at about, as the celebrational card tells us, we are at about 12,000 subscribers and growing. And make sure you come say hello over on Instagram and TikTok too. I will put a link below to my end of the year beauty awards, community beauty awards. Your vote counts, and I would love for you to vote. Voting is open until December 21st, 2022 at midnight my time in California. So definitely make sure you get a chance to do that if you haven't yet, a little homework assignment. And remember that you can give super thanks to keep the lights on around here, and you can become a member of this channel for members only exclusives and lives and fun stuff like that. And I will hope to see all of you in the next video. Bye-bye.